The Urban Myth Dissolution Center is an investigative visual novel which puts you in the dainty shoes of Azami as she's recruited into the titular Urban Myth Dissolution Center and sent out to investigate paranormal cases. Although coerced might be a better term, she's forced to work for the center after supposedly incurring an enormous debt after breaking a chair in which the head of the center had hidden a trap. She's given a brief overview that the ghosts she's been seeing her entire life are all real, is introduced to her driver Jasmine, and then sent out on her first case. As you can see, the game's pixel art is just incredible. I've gone on before about how wondrous pixel artists they're getting recently, and the Urban Myth Dissolution Center cutscenes are just stunning. Outside of them, the level design it's simple, but it's well detailed. You're not going to be stuck in figuring out where to go. The minimalist art style and 8-bit colour scheme contrasts starkly with the identification and dissolution sections, with huge lurid graphics flashing across the screen to the sound of pounding techno. Urban Myth Dissolution Center is a lot of things. Subtle ain't one of them. Visual novels live and die on their stories and character, and Urban Myth does the former far better than the latter. The stories inside each episode are dense and engaging, and they're all linked together with an overarching plot that's even more engaging. It's a wonderfully macabre onion for you to peel, and you'll be gripped from one moment to the next. This is just as well, because getting from one moment to the next in these stories will take a while. I think the main thing that a visual novel should avoid above all else is it should never drag. The game should never be a slog to get through. It's a curious balancing act that visual novels have to master between making the story dense enough for the player to be immersed in, but not so dense that they're drowning in useless information and dialogue. For the most part, Urban Myth's pacing is really good, but it gets bogged down at points, especially in the social media research sections, which are excruciating to get through. These cases are broken up into segments like research, investigation, identification, more investigation, and then dissolution. The idea for these is to prevent the gameplay loop from getting too repetitive for each section, to act like a kind of palate cleanser for the one after it. But for me, it often just dragged out the playtime by just constantly restating information that was already known. The characters are a bit of a mixed bunch as well. You never really find out anything about them until the closing chapters, and there's very little about the rest of the crew at the centre. As each chapter is mostly its own self-contained story, there's a succession of fleeting ancillary characters that just blow through, and none of them really made any sort of impression on me. There's a similar lack of meat to the majority of the puzzles as well. Due to its visual novel nature, the developers have decided to make getting through the game as frictionless as possible, so most of the puzzles present no challenge at all. It's mostly just talking and looking at everything enough times until you unlock all the dialogue options. Even the identification and dissolution question sections are quite easy, and there's no penalty for giving any wrong answers. While I understand why the game is like this, I can see this lack of jeopardy turning off a lot of mystery game fans. In conclusion, for visual novel fans, there's a lot to like about the Urban Myth Dissolution Center. There's a series of really good stories wrapped in a very good one, all with their own twists and turns. It's an interesting topic, and one that should at least attract some fans from outside the visual novel genre. It has wonderful pixel art and a brilliant soundtrack. Such a shame that there's a lot to dislike too. For a game that's gone great lengths to grease the wheels for players to get through it, it seems heavily padded at times, and the gameplay loops, especially the social media sections, got old fast and only got worse as the game went on. I also would have liked a lot more difficult puzzles, but I can understand that it wasn't the aim of the game to be a serious brain teaser. While I did praise and like the overarching story, I can see the ending is one that will firmly divide people, hence why I've not touched on it at all for fear of spoilers. I liked it, but I could see how it could sour the experience as a whole for others. Anyway, if you're looking for something a little different to your visual novels, or you're looking to dip your toe into the genre, you'll find an entertaining, if somewhat overlong, over-the-top experience at the Urban Myth Dissolution Center.